A lot of us, on the outside just think homelessness is we're driving through downtown Pittsburgh and we see
Yes.
maybe the tents or different things that nature, but what you see every day is just it's people from all different backgrounds. And so can you
True.
talk a little bit about the complexity of the homelessness, the situation, and how it has shifted and changed?
Yeah, well, a couple of ways to come at that. One is understanding the impact of trauma. There was a study back in the 90s that came out, and basically in the United States, 60% of adults have experienced one adverse childhood event. And that event continues to have impact in their lives into their adulthood. But what we know for people experiencing homelessness, that 90% have experienced 3 or more events by the time they reach adulthood. So just imagine that. That means that a person growing up has had a loss of a parent. They might have seen someone killed in front of them, or they might have had some other kind of traumatic experience. And before they could get over that, another one happened. So the first one was never really healed, and then another one happened, and another one. And now the fact that they're seeing us, they're having another traumatic experience. So you have people who are dealing with trauma on top of trauma.
I'm here with Jerrel Gilliam, the Executive Director of Light of Life, and we are here in the heart of the ministry, which is the kitchen, and it's such an honor, Jerrel, just to be talking together and having this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the Glory Hour.
Well, welcome to Light of Life. This is a home for so many people, and we love the community here. So for you to be able to come here, experience this means a lot to us. You honor us, so thank you.
Oh, well, such an honor and joy. And I've been connected through this ministry in so many different facets and ways over the years. And
Yeah.
for those who may not be familiar with Light of Life, can you just share a little bit of the heart and the mission behind all that you do?
Yeah, well, Light of Life started back in 1952. We've celebrated over 70 years of ministry, and it's changed over those years. Initially, it was a soup kitchen, just a place for people who were coming up into our area, working in the mills, needing a place to stay and a place to eat. And so it started off with that. But over the years, it's become more complex. And with that, Light of Life has changed. So at first it was just men sleeping here overnight. And then by the 90s, we added women and children to that. And then with each change in our society, we've had to adopt the way that we offer our services. When crack happened, that changed the profile of those. We started seeing the average age get younger and younger of people experiencing homelessness. When I first started, it was usually people who were over 50 that were homeless. But then we started seeing more women with children. We started seeing younger and younger men getting involved. And then when the opioid crisis hit, it just really, everything changed. And we saw people from every facet of life, from suburbs, rural, urban, poor, rich. They were all impacted by the opioid crisis. And that really changed the dynamic of what we do. And it was at that point that we realized we could not be the same mission where people were coming to us for help. We needed to actually go to them. And so we created an outreach team at that point, and we started going out and sharing and trying to pull people in. And and we continue to grow to this day.
It's really incredible, all the work that you do. And what's beautiful is Light of Life is such a pillar in our city and in our community. And so you've mentioned Light of Life, and it's a faith-based ministry,
Yes.
but people are very familiar about what you do. And, something that you mentioned that really hit my spirit is about the complexity of homelessness and the addiction and opioid epidemic, that I think a lot of us, on the outside just think homelessness is we're driving through downtown Pittsburgh and we see maybe the tents or different things of nature, but what you see every day is just it's people from all different backgrounds. And so can you talk a little bit about the complexity of the homelessness, the situation, and how it has shifted and changed?
Yeah, well, a couple of ways to come at that. One is understanding the impact of trauma. There was a study back in the 90s that came out, and basically in the United States, 60% of adults have experienced one adverse childhood event. And that event continues to have impact in their lives into their adulthood. But what we know for people experiencing homelessness, that 90% have experienced 3 or more events by the time they reach adulthood. So just imagine that. That means that a person growing up has had a loss of a parent. They might have seen someone killed in front of them, or they might have had some other kind of traumatic experience. And before they could get over that, another one happened. So the first one was never really healed, and then another one happened, and another one. And now the fact that they're seeing us, they're having another traumatic experience. So you have people who are dealing with trauma on top of trauma. And with each of those traumas, as we know too, that there's an enemy in this world that wants to kill, steal, and destroy. So he's coming after people and wanting to destroy their understanding of themselves, their own self-worth. And what we say is people begin to believe lies about themselves, others, and God. And when you begin living based on a lie, your life just begins to spiral down. So from that, you can have increased mental health problems, depression, and then of course you're trying to find solutions, and the world is quick to offer these false solutions that really just cover up things temporarily, but ultimately, until they come to Christ, until they deal with the issues that led them to that point, they're going to continue to have those problems. And so that's one level, is just trauma is a big one. The other thing is that we often say that homelessness is hidden in plain sight. I often, when we do a presentation, I'll have a PowerPoint, and on that PowerPoint there's like 4 pictures, and one's a person holding a sign, one's a college student with a backpack, one looks like a businessman with a tie, one's a woman with a child in a carrier and a stroller, like in Point Park. And I say to the people, you know, which of these are homeless? And really each of them represents one of the profiles of homelessness, and we just often don't think of it. When you say homeless person or homelessness, you think of tents now, or you might think of somebody holding a sign. But there's a woman and her 2 children, toddlers, walking in a park downtown that you pass, and you might think, oh, they're just out in the evening walking in Point Park looking at the fountain. Really, she's trying to think where she's going to sleep that night. Is there going to be a place where they can be warm? Even if she's sleeping in a car, it is so unstable, where as a mother, you're always wondering who's going to come up to that car. Are they safe? And so you could pass that person, had no idea that that person is homeless. The college student, that's one of those areas, again, people are really shocked. When we moved into this building, we're right down the street, as you know, from CCAC. And I was talking to Dr. Bullock when I first moved to the area, and I'm a big fan of his, and our clients have gone to his school, and there's a lot of great synergy there between us. But he was telling me the story of working late one night here on the north side, seeing this college student. One of the things people love about Dr. Bullock is he spends time with the students. And he was talking to one of the students there, and this kid seemed very bright, was doing well in school. And so he just encouraged him, went on. The next morning, he had an early morning meeting on the campus, so he came early, and he saw the same student, which was unusual. As you know, students like sleeping in the morning. But what caught his eye was he had the same clothes on. And so he talked to his social worker and said, can you look into this? And sure enough, this young student who was doing so well in school was homeless, and was finding laundromats or places to stay, was taking sponge baths in their bathroom. And he began to reach out to that young man. We know about 2 years ago, there was a survey at University of Pittsburgh, and they discovered that there was around 3,000 students that self-identified in that last year of having experienced housing insecurity. Not all of them were on the street, but they didn't have a consistent, stable place to stay. They might have been couch surfing or moving around. And so again, you see a person, a college student, with a backpack, you think, oh, they're okay, they're fine. Many of them are wondering where they're going to spend the next night. And that person that looks like a business person, same thing. They're at our emergency services building, we have an emergency shelter. And there are some people that get up from that shelter and they put on a suit and tie and go to work. Their coworkers would have no idea they're sleeping in a shelter. But because of financial reasons, they may not have been able to stay in their apartment. Maybe there's a fire, maybe there was a divorce and they could no longer stay there. And so again, this homelessness is a problem that's hidden in plain sight. And that's why we need to walk around with discernment, to really understand and hear from God, like how we can be good neighbors to those around us.
Yeah. You know, Jerrel, as you're just explaining the different facets of what homelessness looks like today, and just thinking about the college student or the businessman, it's very, very complex.
Yes.
It's very different than what we thought, or even the images I think about growing up is like what you see and what's portrayed, but because of the different dynamics in our economy and our culture, it has completely shifted everything. And so I'm just curious, you know, with Light of Life, how do you address those complexities and the trauma, but insert the Spirit of God into it as well?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I love talking about how God gets into the picture because that's really the thing that sets us apart. I love the opportunity when I've had a chance to talk to someone that wants to come in and get into a recovery program or something. And so often they have tried rehab after rehab. If they had insurance, they've exhausted their insurance. They no longer have money. And they'll say, Jerrel, I've tried this before. I can't change. I can't change. Do you really think I have hope? And I always get a big smile on my face because I know with a certainty that with Christ, all things are possible. And what I share with them is that often we try to change in ourselves, it's impossible. And we can have the best of intentions, but it's like trying to run this building on a 9-volt battery. We just have no ability in ourselves to really change. And I know for me in my younger years when I struggled with different things, I would try to self-will myself out of sinful patterns or destructive things. I couldn't do it. I had to surrender. But when you have Christ in your life, He gives you the ability. That's what grace is about, the divine enablement to live the life God called you to live. And so what I'm able to tell them is that not only can it happen, it will happen if you accept Christ into your life. His power now gives you the ability to do what you couldn't do before. And so as we look at that and we look at people, we had to develop a whole continuum of care. And I started going down that road a little bit where we saw, well, people were not coming to us like they used to, so we need to have an outreach team. So then as we started going out and getting people, we realized that depending on what the path they came to that led them to Light of Life, we needed to have a way for them to go out. One time I was thinking about how complex this issue was, and we were coming through the pandemic, and it really challenged us in a lot of ways. And this imagery came to my mind of Niagara Falls, because I've been there several times, that people grown up in Pittsburgh have gone up. And I would get the question a lot, like, what can we do about homelessness? How can we change this? How can we change the trajectory here in our county? And it's as if we're standing at the bottom of Niagara Falls and saying, how can we stop Niagara Falls? It's impossible. You can't do it. But if you've been a visitor there, you know that in the 1800s, there's pictures of when the falls stopped. There's a whole presentation up there about it. And there was this point where Niagara Falls came to a trickle. And the way that happened was ice dams formed over the Niagara River from Lake Erie. And slowly, each of those tributaries were cut off and the falls were able to stop. And when I saw that, it was like a prophetic picture of, I can't do it if I try to stop everything. But what I can do is look at each of the tributaries. And for Light of Life and other community partners and the church and friends, the community, if each of us say, you know what, I'll take this tributary, I can make an impact here, and another one takes another one and another one, in time, we'll be able to impact everyone who's experiencing homelessness. So that's where our continuum of care started. It started with having programs for people who are actually out in the streets, still living in tents, still in the middle of their addiction. For them, it looks like bringing a cup of cold water in Jesus' name. It's just going to them, giving them something, but there's always a connection to a resource and an invitation into our community. For some of them, it'll take days, weeks, sometimes years before they'll finally say yes. But we want to be there when they do. And then once they come in, they often, their first step is emergency services. And so that's what our Vetley building is about. It's like, if I need services today, I need a shower, I need food to eat, I need a place to stay. So that's what that building is about. There's not necessarily a commitment to change, but there is an acknowledgement that I need help. Yeah. So we want to meet them there. Very little commitment. Is basically just don't be a harm to yourself or to others, follow the rules, and you can stay there. And so we have people there. But when they're at that level, our workers are now saying to them, don't you want to come out of this lifestyle? Mm-hmm. There is a better way. We have these other programs. And then depending on how long they've been homeless, what the other contributing issues have been, we have programs that can come alongside them. If it's drug and alcohol recovery, we have programs for that. If it's mental health support, we have programs for that. If it's women who are single, we have housing for them. They build their own community. We have things for them. If women with children, we have a program for that. And if there are people that don't have drug and alcohol history, they just need a place to save some money for a down payment, and they just need to have a mailing address, we have a program for them. So we just keep having every place along the continuum, we want to have the next step for them, so that on the other end are our alumni. And those are the people that have gone through the program. They have now successfully been reintroduced into society, and now they're giving back. And that's one of the great joys of my life, is running into somebody in a Walmart and they'll say, you know, I was in your program 10 years ago, 20 years ago. This is my grandchild, or this is my husband and my wife, or whatever it is, and we get to celebrate with them what God has done in their life.
Oh, I love that so much. And you know, you were talking about the alumni and the graduation ceremony. I've had an opportunity to be part, and it is truly remarkable, and it is so beautiful. Yeah. And you know, one thing even, I remember the late Tunchenko said, you know, when you walk through the doors of Light of Life, you'll never be the same. And that's a bit for me, like just being, you know, connected to here, and it's truly touched my life. And just to see the hope and the healing that you bring to people, doesn't matter what the situation, doesn't matter what's going on, that's the heart of it. And it's through the power of Jesus. And I love it so much. And, you know, one thing I think that also, it's very, you know, a lot of us know that sets us apart is just the intentionality to make this feel like home. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like what we typically think of as a shelter. It feels like home. Yes. And even being here in the kitchen, y'all throw it down in the kitchen. I mean, I've heard there's times you have some salmon, there's chicken. It's great. So that's a beautiful thing that truly sets Light of Life apart, is that when you walk into the facilities, when you walk in here, it feels like home.
Yeah, it's by design. We want to surprise people with hospitality. We want it to be the opposite. I hate to pick on the DMV, but that's what I usually say. Like, we don't want it to be this, sterile institutional environment. We want it to feel like you're walking into a place where you are home. And there's actually behavioral science behind it. And we actually consulted with a person, Dr. Jerrel Gilliam, from Florida State University. They have a whole department that focuses on trauma-informed building design. And they have discovered that the built design can help a person heal. The colors, the type of seating, the height of the ceilings, the width of the hallways, all of that help people to feel safe. And even as you were talking about our kitchen here, it's by design. Like when I used to come here with my parents back in the 70s and 80s, it basically was like a typical meal line. Everybody would get a scoop of mashed potatoes and a spoonful of peas and meatloaf. But what we've done is we've built choice into everything. So it's not just having a salad bar, but we want people to understand, again, dealing with that trauma, that you have choice, you have agency. You can impact even what you're eating. Yeah. So you can pick between corn or carrots, and it may seem like a small thing, but when you've been living on the street or you've been in an environment that says you don't count, you don't matter, something as small as that can help the brain begin to rewire and say, you know what, I can begin to dream again. I can begin to impact my future again. We like saying that, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but community. And so community is so important to us. And that's the greatest compliment you can say, is that you feel that community when you walk in here. And we want people to feel that when they come in.
This just brings so much joy, just even hearing the intentionality of design, because I love interior designing.
Yes.
And so you feel it, and just knowing that there's interior design for trauma. Yes. To help heal. And even with the food choices, it's that power of choice, and yes. Just giving people the ability to be like, we know your story and where you've come from, right. But when you come here, you have choice, you have an opportunity to change and experience and encounter Jesus Christ. Yeah. It just brings so much joy into my heart. And I know something else that, Jerrel, that is big on your heart, is there's a movie that's coming out called No Address. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you're partnering with them?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. There are movies that come out every once in a while that try to deal with the issues of homelessness. But oftentimes they either it's like a characterization of it, or it's not really accurate. But this particular movie, they were very careful to depict the actual lives of people. And one of the things that I love that they did, they were telling us that when the actors came together, the producer, the writer, before they started, they said, you know what? And before we jump into production, we want to understand this. So they made a decision to ride across the country and stop in major cities and visit the street homeless, go to camps, go to tents, hear the stories. And so the actors actually interacted with people, and they took months to go across our country, and they were able to carry that into this process. And the other thing that I enjoy about this movie is that it captures what I was telling you about the different tributaries. Yeah. It's not just somebody who's on drugs or somebody who has mental health. One of the gripping stories, without doing a spoiler alert, is just a young woman who is aging out of foster care. This happens basically every day. It happens in our county. People, they age out of foster care. The funding stops for that family. And in a lot of cases, there's no next step for them. And this woman depicts a story of coming home at the end of school after her birthday, and basically there's a sign on the door that she can no longer stay there. She has her backpack. She begins walking down the street and just trying to figure out what to do next, ends up being in an encampment. And so there are people like that in our city. They have no background with mental health or drug and alcohol, and they end up in an encampment. And so this movie will help you understand that story. It also brings another aspect that people forget too, is that when you see an encampment or you see homeless hanging around each other, sometimes we forget that they create a community. Mm-hmm. And so when people are offering a change out of that, part of why there's resistance is because maybe for the first time in years, they actually have a community. Yeah. From somebody from the outside, it may not seem like a community. It seems like a tent, or it seems like just some people hanging out. But you have to realize for them, this is community. And they pick that up in this movie too, just how for some people, they want to stay together. Some people rather stay homeless together than one of them go into a shelter, because that's what's on their mind. And in other cities, what they're doing is looking for solutions where they can keep those little cohorts together, so they can all move into security and healing together. And so we're looking at at piloting some programs like that here in our city as well.
Oh, wow. That is truly beautiful, because I know I shared with you when we had a conversation on the phone is that I have somebody that's in my family that right now just caught up in situations, but he's prefer to live on the streets. And it's just what you're saying, it's that community.
Yes.
And it's that community where you have peace, where there's comfort, where you can talk, where you have the shared lived experience.
Yes.
That for some of us on the outside, we're like, we
Right.
don't understand, like, why would you want to get out of it? But I think you spoke to, it's the power of community, and that's something that God really laid on my heart and spoke to me, even for the glory hours, just really focus on communities, because that's where change happens. That's we're all part of different communities. And so I just so commend you, like, all that you do for Light of Life. And it's just even exciting to hear there are going to be pilot programs with these cohorts, because something that breaks my heart is, you know, walking through the city of Pittsburgh. And I know for many of us, if, you know, living close to the city or coming down or even other cities, it's like, I've never seen it look the way that it does, and it breaks my heart, because that's somebody's son, that's someone's daughter, that's a mother, that's a father, that's an auntie, that's an uncle, that's somebody's family, and there's something happened to them. And I think a lot of times we can say, like, oh my gosh, why are they living like this? No, like what you were just talking about, the ACEs, the adverse trauma, and you know, something happened to them. But if we can just show them the love, and the one thing I think about Jesus was about communities.
That's right.
He was about gathering and coming together. So
it's
truly like he's an example, so we can be an example and follow suit.
And I hope that as we, just as you were talking, as we encounter people, that we begin to see people through Christ's eyes, and try to understand that there is a journey that they're on, and we can be part of that next step for them. And sometimes that next step is just a smile. It doesn't necessarily mean giving them money. It means acknowledging their humanity. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just say hello to somebody, smile at them. You may not give them the money that they're asking for, but at least you're acknowledging that their presence is there. And so yeah, we have a great opportunity in our city. Across the country, there is a 13% increase in homelessness. This is Homelessness Awareness Month, and so we've been talking about these statistics. And in our city, we're actually outpacing that. It's growing at a faster rate here. So we need to do some things different. And one of the things I like saying, Sydney, is that as we think about the solutions that are being offered out there, let's use, just like Christ told us, treat others the way we want to be treated. Let's apply the same principles to the solutions that we're offering to those who are experiencing homelessness. Recently, we had this big push towards sanctioning camps, and there was this idea, and I think it came from a positive place. They wanted to, for people who are experiencing homelessness not to be harassed, and they wanted them to have a place where they know that they could stay. So one of the solutions was, there are some people that were staying by the river. Let's give them a place where it will basically be their spot to stay. And there are people who were advocating for, let's sanction certain parts of our city that could be these sanctioned camps. And for some, it could seem like, okay, let's do that. Somebody asked me, what is my stand or our stand on that? And what I said to them is, I believe we can do better. Yes, I agree, we want to try to have a place for people. But I said to them, and what I challenged people with, if the solution would not apply to your son or daughter, your brother or sister, your mother or father, then it shouldn't apply to them. Would it be okay for one of my kids to say, hey, I want you to live in this tent with no electricity, no plumbing, next to a river? No, I would say no. It's not a place for human habitation. And so let's look at rehabbing some housing. Let's look at rehabbing some apartment buildings or unused motels and things like that. They were created for human habitation. We have a lot of blighted buildings around here. Let's put people in homes and houses instead of saying, let's be in a tent next to the river. And I think there's lots of opportunity to do that. There are community partners who are stepping up, and we're happy to partner with them to find those solutions.
I love it so much. It's like the vision. It's like going beyond.
Yeah.
And I'm just really grateful, and I'm excited to see where God is going to take Light of Life, and also when it comes to the homeless community, the men, women, and children, the stories and the testimonies that we're going to hear. So thank you so much, Jerrel, just for taking the time to share your heart, and thank you for all the work that you do and leading Light of Life so well.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. And I think of two things I like to add with.
Yeah.
You told me I could do this.
Yes.
And so the one is is this principle from a book called Prophetic Imagination. And what I want our people who are your guests, who are your people watching your show in the Glory Hour, is to not just look at people for where they are, not just look at the situation of homelessness, but asking Holy Spirit to give them prophetic imagination for what is it that our city looks like when we see the glory of God released here. What does it look like in the eyes of a person who right now is experiencing homelessness? What does that person look like when they're healed and whole? When Jesus spoke to someone, he spoke to them as to the person they were made to be, not who they were now. That's why he could say to Peter, "You're the rock." Yeah. He wasn't a rock yet. He was still very unstable, but he called him out. And that's what we need to do as a church, is to call people out, call our city out, call our county out, to treat people not where they are, but where they need to be. And so that's an exercise that we can start by prayer, engage in prayer and intercession for people to be the people God has created them to be. And then for organizations like ours to be able to make space for people to transform. Yeah. And the last thing was, I know often at the station, there'll be a time where somebody will say, "Why don't you look in the camera if you're talking to somebody who is experiencing homelessness?" And I was just wondering if I could do that.
You sure can.
And just do that. Which camera should I look at?
So it's that camera right there.
Okay. All right. If you are experiencing homelessness, instability right now, I want you to know, first of all, you are not alone. You are important to God. No matter what your experience has been, people may have told you other things, but I'm here to tell you that each person is created by God. The Bible tells us we were knit together in our mother's womb, regardless of what the circumstances were. We might have been a surprise to our mothers, but you are not a surprise to God. And when you are knit together in your mother's womb, God has a purpose for you. And until we find that purpose, there's an emptiness in our heart. And it's unfortunate that we live in a broken world, and in that broken world, people do not treat us with the dignity and respect that God has made us. And many of us have been hurt, we've been traumatized, and we've been set aside. But today is your day. If you accept Christ, the path that he's putting in front of you, you can have a new beginning. Light of Life is here to help you and come alongside you. Your church is available. There are believers that God has placed in your life who will point you in the right direction. What I'm saying is, you are never too far away from God. He loves you. What he wants you to hear right now is that I love you. It's not that you've made mistakes, you've failed. That's what the world tells you. What he wants you to know is, I love you and I have a plan for your life. So I tell you, hope is today. Hope is for you. Hope has a name, and that name is Jesus. So step out, make the call, come visit us at Light of Life, and your life will be different.
Thank you so much for sharing that heartfelt response. The prophetic imagination is the call for all of us, is to have that prophetic imagination and hearing what God is speaking to us so we can be bearing his glory, bearing his image, and also the solution. And then if you are dealing with homelessness, you can always give us even a call at Cornerstone at 888-665-4483, and we will get you connected to Light of Life. And if you're outside of Pittsburgh, we'll connect you still to Jerrel Gilliam, because they have a network of different places where they can connect you to places that will love you well, because they want you to know that Jesus loves you and he died for you, and that is the greatest hope that we all have. And it has been such an honor and joy. Thank you.
Come back anytime.
Yes.
When I had depression, it was a very lonely stage in my life. I started to not recognize myself. I started being alone every day, not going to work, not paying bills. I didn't answer calls. I didn't talk to family or friends. It's a hurtful feeling to where it grabs you in the chest, and it just continues to grab you because you have no relief. It's a suffocation.
I grew up in Edgewood, in the east end of Pittsburgh. It was a good Christian home. I grew up going to Sunday school and vacation Bible school. When I was in high school, I started to drink and smoke weed on the weekends. And I realized that sometimes I didn't have control over it. And I started going to 12-step meetings in 1981.
The minute I walked from Hazelwood to Northside, it was that exact time I came to the Northside when I had nowhere to go. I was like, I'm homeless. And the only reason I'm homeless is because I walked away from everything that I had because I just couldn't take it anymore.
In the summer of 1999, I was living a good life in Hawaii. I was married, happily married, and I was diagnosed with colon cancer out of the blue. I had a tumor the size of a golf ball in my descending colon. I've had cancer in my colon, my lungs, breasts, and I've had 5 different surgeries, and I've been prescribed a lot of opiates.
The path to homelessness is different for different people. And we know that since COVID has happened, that there's been an increase in those who are dealing with depression, those who are dealing with mental health issues. And then you have those that enter into homelessness because of addiction, with the opioid crisis, which continues to set records of deaths in our county. Many people are being impacted by that crisis. And a lot of them, they entered into that addiction by getting a prescription from a doctor. They find themselves in this situation, and next thing you know, they're addicted to an opioid, and then they try to find other ways of feeding that addiction when they can't get the prescription any longer.
I started wanting more and started taking more than what was prescribed. I was still going to 12-step meetings, and I met somebody at one of my meetings who was a heroin addict, and we kind of hit it off, and I ended up doing a drug that I said I'd never do.
I got to a point in my life where I wanted to jump off a bridge at a point in my life during my homelessness. I didn't want to deal with it no more. I didn't. It sucked. Life sucked. Like, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. I didn't have anything. I was just to the point where I'm just at this bridge, and I'm just like, just take one step at a time and you could be there.
We started getting arrested, possession. I started overdosing. I had family members not talking to me. It got to the point where death was a comfortable thought to me, because I did not want to keep living this way, but I was stuck.
So one of the things that Light of Life does is that, first of all, we want to hear someone's story. We want to talk to them. We want them to know that they have a safe place that cares about them. And then we want to come alongside them and refer them to places that can help them. For many of them, part of that depression has left them feeling isolated and feeling like they don't have any options. And what we want them to know is that there's a whole community that is waiting to help them and come alongside them.
I ended up getting arrested a few times. I ended up going to jail, which I was horrified. And then I realized that I needed to change my life desperately.
Light of Life, the moment I walked through that door, it was quite an adventure. I walked in that door, didn't know, have directions. I didn't have a sense of security. I didn't have any hope. I didn't have anything but the clothes on my back. And I gave them my name, and they said, "We know who you are. We were just waiting for you." And when I went to the Light of Life, they told me how to get back into working. But before work, it was more of dealing with this. This was like the first 6 months right here. It was the first 6 months of dealing with who Nate was and how can we help him. And when I got in, it helped me get closer to God.
One of the exciting things I love about Light of Life is seeing the change that a person has once they come into our doors. One of the things that our alumni like to do is to look at their picture when they were first came into our doors, and you can see in their eyes the darkness in their eyes, the weight of the world on their shoulders. And then just after a few months of being in the program, you see the light come back. You see their sparkle back in their eye. There's hope there again. And what you're seeing is the difference between hopelessness and hope. When a person has hope, life lights up again, and that's what Light of Life is here for, is to help people have hope again, to realize that they can love again, that life is not over, that their history is not their destiny, that the things that they've experienced in the past does not have to be their future, and there can be a new beginning if they would just dare to take that step and start again.